Hi. So today I'm going to talk about the differences between academic finance and the real world finance. If you have studied finance in university, I'm going to tell you how is it going to be different when you join the real world and you work in a bank or an insurance company or a hedge fund. It's going to be quite different actually from, and a lot of things actually we have learned you have to unlearn, and a lot of the things that you think that you already know, you will come to know that you actually do not know much about that, right? So it gives you a very wrong impression, right? When you do finance, master's degree or MBA finance, MSc finance, MSc financial economics or quant finance in many university, it gives you wrong impression about this field. But when you actually work, you will see that it is quite different, right? It's similar actually in other fields also. If you do a computer science master's degree or bachelor degree, you learn a lot of things that are pretty much useless when you actually start working, right? When you actually work as a software engineer, all you need to know is how to write proper code. But when you do computer science, you learn a lot of mathematics, a lot of other stuff which are pretty much useless in the real world, except maybe in few cases. The field of finance is a bit different in that way. A lot of theory we will study actually is useful, but the thing is that the way it is taught is quite different from how it is used in the real world. And I'll tell you from my own experience, but what also I have heard from people, and as to why people are not that not fan of finance masters or finance MBA finance programs, because a lot of things you learn there, it's far from the reality. It's also because most of the academicians, most of the professors have no real world experience. They probably have written a lot of papers, have gone through a lot of books, have studied finance, done PhD in finance. The problem is that they have no idea about real world finance. They have never worked in a fund, they have never managed money, they have never worked in a bank. So somebody, it's more like, somebody is a doctor and he has done he has done research on some surgery, but has never done a surgery himself. So how is it possible for him to teach how to do surgery, right? That's impossible. It's exactly the that with academicians, working in finance. Somebody who has never worked in the real world finance will never be able to tell you actually how it is used and applied in the real world. Right? Some professors do have some experience. They do consulting, especially in the management schools, but a lot of them haven't been very successful in the real world. One very famous example is that the LTCM, the big hedge fund in the 90s, was founded by Nobel Prize winning professors, and it did well for a couple of years, but then it went bankrupt, right? So the private companies, the real world financial companies, they are a bit reluctant to hire academicians, people who specialize in academic finance, simply because the perception is that once you are termed academic, you don't know much about the real world. That may not be the case, but that's the reason why you don't see many academic professionals working in the real world finance actually, right? There are some exceptions, but not too many, right? So that's one thing to note actually. The thing is that what you have learned from your professors is good enough, it's going to be useful, but you have to make some adjustment. You really need to then unlearn certain things. You need to learn certain new things when you start working, and I'm going to give you some examples, right? Okay, so one thing is, a topic that you might have studied in the field of finance is efficient market hypothesis, right? It's a very talked about finance concept. In master's finance courses, you spend probably a couple of weeks, couple of lectures, I think at least 5 to 6 lectures, just to learn this particular concept, right? There are debates also within the class as to, okay, it's good enough, good, some people talk in favor of it, and some people reject it. But when you work in the field of finance, actual finance, that's probably a pretty useless concept, right? It's good to know about that concept, But if you believe in that, then a lot of the things that you in the field of finance you will not do, because you don't look at that long term perspective about finance, and you don't go by that super theoretical perception about things. There's nothing wrong about this theory. It has got Nobel Prize for the one who actually formulated it. Problem is that if you take that very seriously, you will have problem. So you have to, and there are many such concepts, by the way. There are many such theoretical concepts in the field of finance that you really need to have to unlearn a bit, right? Other things being, for instance, if you do a quant finance program, you will learn a lot of mathematics, you will learn a lot of derivations, right? But who does derivation in the real world? Nobody does, right? It's good to have understanding of that, good to have the intuition behind the derivations, but you will not do derivations actually. But much of the time in the university is spent in deriving things, right? That's not going to be useful. While what is missed actually, how to implement, how to use in a real world scenario, how to use for a for a real world product, financial product, how do you use a pricing algorithm to price a real world derivative, how to take real world data, write a program, implement the algorithm. It's not taught. Even in the best of the best quant finance programs, I've heard that it's not taught in university, right? But that's exactly what matters, right? So that's other difference that you will come across. The third difference is that the data set that is used, right? In the academia, the data set used is very small, very clean data set from some public sources, right? And the problems that you tackle, they're very limited actually, because you don't have access to the proprietary data. Nobody will ever share proprietary data, the customer's data with anyone, right? So you'll never get access to that when you are in university. And the real world finance happens with real world data, customer data, proprietary data, something that you will never have access to if you don't work in a financial service company, right? And that's proprietary, so it will never be accessible to academicians. So the data they work with is not of good quality. A lot of the problems they work with are very too theoretical actually, right? Right. So you really need to and also for I'll give an example of for example in quantitative risk modeling, right? You learn some risk modeling concept in university and you work on some problems, but you will never have access to actual risk modeling data, and that is a lot messy actually. Just data preparation itself takes years actually, right? That experience you will never get in university because you will never have access to that sort of data. In fact, there is no such data available to the public. Only if you work for a big bank you will have access to that, right? Similarly, if you're working with buy side research firms, what are the things that you'll have access to a lot of internal information regarding the company that you are doing the research on from Bloomberg and all those places. That data you can get, but the thing is it's very expensive, and in many programs you don't have the money to actually get access to Bloomberg or other such data providers, right? So that is the difference in the data itself, right? It's a very applied discipline, right? It's not like theoretical mathematics or theoretical physics. It's finance is a very applied discipline, but the problem with finance is that there's no clear definition of what is finance, right? For a quant, it's quant finance, that's finance. For accountant, accounting is the finance. If you ask a valuation expert, he says valuation is everything about finance is all about valuation. I was listening to an economist actually was talking about modern finance. He said modern finance is about risk management. So there's no clear definition of what is finance. It's a very interdisciplinary field which has got things from mathematics, from accounting, from economics, from psychology, even behavioral finance, for example, right? So it has got a bit of everything, right? So if you do not have a proper definition of a given field, it's very difficult to justify things in a in a program, right? If you do masters in finance program, you will miss out on the quantitative part. You will do for accounting program, you will miss out on both the managerial finance, applied finance, but also the quant part. If you do a quant finance, you will miss out on the accounting and the more non-quant side of finance. Very difficult to do do a master's degree which provides you all types of finance knowledge, right? So that's again a problem with the field of academia. But when you actually work, you will need bit of everything. Nowadays it's impossible to work in finance without having some quantitative skills. Even if you have top class quantitative skills, impossible to work in the field of finance without the knowledge of financial markets, without knowledge of regulation, without knowledge of macroeconomy, and so on and so forth, right? So the best advice for students would be that, okay, focus on whatever you are learning in university. That's important. Even if you do not have any finance degree, that's also fine. Don't worry about that. That's less important. In fact, sometimes it is a blessing in disguise. It's sometimes people prefer non-finance people for finance roles, so that you can learn. You don't have to unlearn. You don't have to put effort to unlearn things, because you're starting from scratch. So you don't have that academic baggage which needs to be removed once you work in field real world. So very important to first of all get some experience. I think getting experience is the best way. Learning on the job is perhaps the best thing in the field of finance for everything nowadays, but in the field of finance it's a bit more important. But at the same time, having some mentorship by someone is also quite important, simply because otherwise you probably will struggle. At least for the first few years you will struggle in the career, right? Once you work for a couple of years, 2-3 years, then you will get a sense of what you really like, whether you like it at all or not, what field of finance you like the most, and then you can venture into whatever you like. You can go into the quant side, but also go into the more business or front office side. You can be a trader, more of a relationship manager. Whatever you want to be, you can be. There's no hard and fast rule. You don't have to just pursue one type of finance career. You can switch between these roles, right? So important thing is not to bunk classes if you're doing MBA finance or MSc finance, but at the same time, don't be super overconfident. Don't think that you will outsmart people who come from non-finance background, right? And the ones who actually were interested in finance but do not have finance background qualification, don't worry too much, actually. In fact, when I work, it's been over a decade now, I work with more non-finance people in finance compared to people having finance degrees, right? Right. In some places, actually, in fact, there is a preference for non-finance people in the field of finance, especially on the quant side, right? So that's an important thing to know. And I wanted to share actually why how academic finance is different from real world finance, and what are the things that you need to keep in mind. But having said that, I am not discouraging you to learn theoretical finance well, or I am not discouraging you to not take your finance courses very seriously. Not at all. In fact, you must focus on that, on things, but have an open mind when you join in the industry, so that you can get the best of both, right? You use your theoretical knowledge, but at the same time open to learn from other more applied people, people who have real world experience, people who have been doing real world things for years and decades. Don't have that sort of ego that I already know so much of finance because I have done CFA. That's fine. The guy who has been working in that company for 10 years, he doesn't have a CFA, he just a bachelor degree in mathematics. He's not a CFA, but he probably can lecture you for I don't know how. So don't have that sort of ego that just because you have a CFA or MSc finance from top university, you know more than non-finance people working in finance. That's pretty rubbish. Finance is a very applied field, and only people who do it full time for a living, they understand it. So have that in mind. Okay, this is something I wanted to share with you. If you already have some experience and you want to share your thoughts, please do that in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and see you in another video, guys.